So we're in the golden window, really, of opportunity for stretching your reading in a super-curricular direction. It's very difficult in Year 12. You know better than I do. You've got deadlines hitting you like arrows. You're being assailed from all sides. And then in September, believe me, well, you already know, it gets even worse. And then gradually the window for Oxbridge super-curricular stretch gets narrower. Can I ask you a little bit about what you're already doing this summer?
Well, right now I'm planning out what books I'd like to read. I've already got some at home. They're mainly to do with short stories, especially in sort of a horror literary sort of direction. But I've also got this sort of interest in left-wing politics. So I'm beginning to pick up a few of those sorts of books that I've got at home and I'm planning to read over the summer.
So can you give us an example of something that was in your personal statement last time round, probably coming from the horror genre arena? What did you deploy in your PS last time?
I used Lovecraft and his short stories because I was really interested in the weird and madness. I wrote an article on Lovecraft as part of my Blackpool Sixth Sense magazine. And I was just really interested in it because it's not really something that you encounter in a normal A-level setting, madness, but it's sort of this theme that sort of permeates a lot of literature. So it's this sort of unknowable sort of side to madness.
Did you go into Edgar Allan Poe and the Marquis de Sade and Kafka? Did you look at any of the more canonical books that might have more chance of coming up at interview?
Well, I had a passing knowledge of Kafka, especially the Metamorphosis, but I feel like I didn't really explore much outside of Lovecraft because I was sort of more focused on breadth rather than depth for my reading.
And did you get value in any one of your 3 interviews in terms of Lovecraft?
Yeah, I think in 2 of them I was able to deploy a rhyming couplet. I believe it went... and
if you did know, do you think if your unconscious mind was liberated, you'd be able to?
Yeah.
Can you recall it? Even if you have to Baudelarize it or paraphrase it, what would it convey?
It was to do with strange eons, even death may die.
Ah, okay. This is an interesting concept in Hinduism. You know, what does immortality really mean? Perhaps even gods can die. And I loved the piece of work you produced about the bullet that killed Kennedy. Could you just say something about that piece?
Well, it was a part of a piece on a memoriam to JFK by Jorge Luis Borges, who was writing about metempsychosis, which is this idea of souls sort of transmogrifying and changing from one being to another. And he applied that to sort of this sort of killing force. So the bullet that killed JFK, it's not something that's new. It's something that's been happening throughout all of human history. You know, go back thousands of years, it's been like axes and spikes and pikes and spears.
And Cain killed Abel.
Yeah.
That sort of creates a template. Well, let's talk a bit about power, because violence is one of the types of power. And you wrote brilliantly about how everything seems to be interconnected with everything else. I mean, that reminded me of the perennial philosophy. And I thought, Sam has an interest in the perennial, and he also has an interest in social justice and the left. In fact, I started thinking, should Sam be applying to Oxford for straight English, or should he perhaps be applying for history with English?
Well, while I was applying, I did have that sort of dilemma, because I was thinking of applying for English with history, but then I feel like the idea of 2 admissions tests sort of scared me off a little bit and sort of confined me to choosing just one subject, which was English.
But now the world is your oyster. You've got another summer of reading opportunities, and you may be taking a gap year in order to target Oxford. So in a world where time is not such a scarce resource, what does your mind say now about 2 aptitude tests and more interviews?
Well, it's a lot more palatable, I think, because having a lot more time to prepare, especially before with having just one, but then having that interspersed with A-level, like day-to-day life, like having a lot more time would really push me to try my best for at least 2, like different aptitude tests.
So we've got these concepts of power arising in different historical settings, and in a theological setting, we might think of something like Macbeth or The Tempest, where Shakespeare is playing with notions of the magical. In fact, skating over thin ice, I think, on occasion. You know, we know what King James has written, and nobody wants to suffer a witch to live, but Shakespeare's prepared to put them on stage in front of royalty. But this use of violence in a theological setting, it becomes quite a theme. I mean, you mentioned it in Malfi before. Where could you take that? If we elide Malfi with your observation about the bullet that killed Kennedy, where would that take you as a creative thinker, creative writer?
Well, I feel like as a writer, I feel like maybe a non-fiction piece, especially about history and how like the violence and power like dynamic that religion has helped some people have, like maybe looking at crusades potentially, looking at other ways religion has inspired like cruelty and subjugation.
Yeah, so plenty of themes to look at there, and maybe even the Cathars, the history of the Cathars and their relationship with the Catholic Church. And one useful typology of power is primary is violence, secondary is agenda control, and tertiary is linguistic manipulation. And we might well go back and look at some topics in history and use that typology. Now, most of our conversation today has been primary. You know, it's the cardinal using the Bible as a poisoned weapon. It's also the use of the gun that Lee Harvey Oswald and 7 other people. We don't know, do we? I mean, are you a conspiracy theorist?
Maybe not an extreme conspiracy theorist, but I do like to try and challenge everything that I hear about. I'm not really to the point of thinking the moon landing was faked, but I do quite like exploring alternate possibilities for a lot of events.
Okay, so if we went back to Kennedy again, I mean, would you value Oliver Stone's film? You could take a filmic route into the undergrowth of the Kennedy assassination and explore more the literature that's been born out of. I think there's even a book called Idlewild, which is about an America in which Kennedy wasn't shot. And in fact, I think JFK Airport was prior to the assassination was called Idlewild. I think that's right. So yeah, we've got plenty to do. I think your passion for the left. I mean, Trotsky. I mean, would you read up on Trotsky?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, he came to a very, very violent end. Do you know about that?
I know a little bit. I know like how Stalin obviously had the very intense dislike of him, and he sort of, I believe it was exile that he went.
He was in Mexico,
Yeah.
and he'd surrounded himself. They'd already tried to kill him a few times. He'd surrounded himself with turrets and bodyguards. But unfortunately, a so-called friend infiltrated his household, and the friend came into the house and planted the climbing pick in one of the rooms. And then Trotsky walks in, and the guy hit him in the back of the skull. And there was this hideous scream, and Trotsky didn't fall to the floor. Primary violence at its core. But I wonder what writing exists out there reflecting on the death of Trotsky and reflecting on the machinations on the left. We know Terry Eagleton, useful source in this area, George Orwell. We could have a lot of fun with exploring the interface between history and literature from a left perspective.
Yeah.
Would you enjoy that?
Yeah, I'd enjoy that.
Brilliant. Well, there's a book by Tony Judt, Ill Furs the Land. It's a great place to start. But you are now definitely leaning to a history and English application and away from just English.
Yeah.
But I think this year it's going to happen. Sam, thank you very much.
Thanks.